Hey everybody, welcome into the Week 8 Waiver Wire Show. A lot to talk about today. Discussing injuries. Brandon Ayuk out for the season, torn ACL. Debo Samuel probably going to be out for a week or two with pneumonia, fluid in his lungs. Lost Chris Godwin last night to a dislocated ankle. Probably going to lose Mike Evans for 2 to 3 weeks with at least 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring injury. Didn't look good. We seen Nico Collins go out for on the IR, and it didn't even look like it was bothering him. With Mike Evans, he was rolling around on the ground. Looked like he was in some pretty serious pain. So I'd imagine this is probably going to be a multiple week injury. But they're adding up. It's affecting some teams more than others. The Bucks are probably going to be looking at maybe picking up another wide receiver now. Same with the 49ers. I don't see them picking up a receiver. I think they'll try to use what they have. But we'll move into the waivers, and we'll start with wide receiver. And first one I'll start with is Cedric Tillman, Cleveland Browns. 12 targets, 8 receptions for 81 yards, and it was 25% of the team targets. Beware, though, that Jerry Jeudy only had 1 target until Jameis Winston entered the game. Winston had 12 attempts. 4 of Jerry Jeudy's 5 targets came when Jameis Winston was put in the game. So expect Jeudy to be the lead receiver on this team behind Njoku. But talking receivers, Jeudy should be the lead target getter on this team. Tillman still had 3 targets from Jameis Winston. And I personally like Tillman better than Jeudy based on his role. I feel like he's going to fill that Amari Cooper role more than Jeudy is. I don't think Judy's role really changed, but he is the more established receiver on the team. And up until this past week, Tillman had only seen 4 targets. So to go from 4 targets total in 6 weeks to 12 targets in 1 game, it's pretty impressive. Shows that they have confidence in him. So I would grab Cedric Tillman if you could. He's only 2% rostered in sleeper leagues, so it's something to keep an eye on and try to take advantage of. Then we'll get into Romeo Dobbs. So Romeo Dobbs is still only 63% owned. I probably should have been talking about him the past couple weeks, but last 2 weeks he's had 14 targets, which is 22% of the team targets. Now, you have to know that there's 3 of the receivers on this team that are getting looks right now. Wicks, Reed, and Christian Watson. And also a tight end emerging to be a tight end 1, which is Tucker Kraft. And Romeo Dobbs has not really performed under the high 2 coverage. And the teams they're facing over the next couple weeks are over 50% in that type of coverage. And he is, I think, 4th on the team in targets when they're facing that type of coverage. So just beware that Romeo Dobbs may come down to earth a little bit over the next couple weeks. Moving on, we'll talk Jaylen McMillan from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like I said, Mike Evans out at least minimum probably 2 to 3 weeks. Godwin gone for the season. McMillan had 8 targets, only 3 receptions, but I really feel like working with the first team and a full week of practice, him and Baker Mayfield will get on the same page, and you'll see a little more efficiency coming from that. So Jaylen McMillan could be a good pickup. Keep an eye on the what the Bucks do at this position, see if they pick somebody up. Honorable mention also, Sterling Shepard played college ball with Baker Mayfield, so you could see him take on a more extended role. But grab Jaylen McMillan if you can. He seemed to be the go-to target after Evans and Godwin left the game. Next up, Cedric Wilson. This is kind of just a desperation move. One of that you could probably get for almost free. 0% rostered. Had 7 targets this past week with Olave out and Shaheed out. Shaheed is gone for the season. Olave should be back this week, but we have seen receivers like Neighbors miss 2 weeks with his concussion, and this is Olave's 3rd concussion, I believe. So they could try to hold him out just to make sure. So Cedric Wilson could be a good grab. He looked good. 7 targets, 6 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown. 17.9% of the target percentage for the team. So, yeah, grab him if you can. Next up, Ricky Pearsall. Like I said, Ayuk's done for the season. Deebo Samuel, we don't know how long or how extended his absence is going to be dealing with pneumonia. But Pearsall had 5 targets for 3 receptions and 21 yards. Nothing huge, but it is his first game back from the shooting at the beginning of the season. So they may be kind of easing him back into the roster right now. But they're not going to be able to do that here as the weeks roll on with the other 2 receivers being out. We don't know. I mean, based on the shooting, if he would have been here at the beginning of the season, he could be filling that Juwan Jennings role. Which, speaking of Juwan Jennings, he is the last receiver I'm going to talk about. Probably my pickup of the week. He's 36% rostered right now on Sleeper. But over the first 6 weeks, and that's he missed last week. 36 targets, 17.1% of the team's target share. Last time Deebo missed, he had 12 targets, 11 receptions, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns in that game. Obviously not a pace he's going to keep up, but it's something to keep an eye on what the percentages are for him and Ricky Pearsall over the next week or two to see who's going to take on that next role, because Ayuk's done for the season. So one of these receivers is going to have value going forward throughout the season. And with Juwan Jennings having that connection with Brock Purdy, there's a good chance it could be him. So take a look at your waivers. If Juwan Jennings is there, he may be worth an add just to see kind of how it plays out. Hopefully he's back this week so we can kind of get a look at how this offense will look going forward. But Juwan Jennings, he's pretty much my pickup of the week at the receiver position. We'll move on to the running back position. First and foremost, this is one of those things you got to kind of keep an eye on what's going on this week. You may be able to get him for next to nothing. He's only 14% rostered in sleeper leagues. But Tyler Goodson for the Indianapolis Colts, it kind of feels like he's taken over that backup role from Trey Sermon. He's been a little bit more efficient. And with Taylor missing time, he hasn't practiced in 3 weeks. So keep an eye on the practice reports this week as it rolls on, and see where Jonathan Taylor is. Because if Jonathan Taylor's in the lineup, you don't want any of these backs. They're almost droppable at that point. But if you need a weak fill-in, Tyler Goodson could be good if Jonathan Taylor misses some time. Next up, we're going to talk Ray Davis for the Buffalo Bills. So Ray Davis, this past week, 5 attempts, 41 yards, and a touchdown, 1 reception for 6 yards. Obviously came back down to earth a little bit with Cook back in the lineup. However, he continues to be efficient. To avoid the injury for Cook, we could see the Bills kind of give him a little bit more of a role in this offense going forward. So either way, he could be a good stash for just in case for a Cook injury, or maybe just a week fill-in for an injury or bye week. It's something worth noting, but he's 28% rostered in sleeper leagues. Grab him if you can, stash him on the bench if you have a spot. With all the injuries going around and bye weeks coming up, Ray Davis could be a good fill-in. Last but not least, in the running back position, but Jaylen Warren for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 42% rostered. Jaylen Warren, everybody was on the fence at the beginning of this year with who was going to lead that backfield. They didn't know Jaylen Warren based on his efficiency last year, but he's been dealing with an injury most of this year. Najee Harris had obviously the better game. He had 21 carries, and he ended up with some pretty good numbers this past week. But since returning from injury, Warren's snap percentage 2 weeks ago was 37%. It went up to 51% in week 7. And he's also gone from 6 attempts in week 6 to 12 attempts in week 7. So he doubled his attempts within the first 2 weeks of returning from injury. And he outsnapped Najee Harris 51% to 49% in week 7. So he's already outsnapping Najee Harris. That could just be them keeping him fresh, and it's the Arthur Smith offense. So we could see Jaylen Warren continue to rise in the carry department and kind of take some of those carries away from Najee Harris just to kind of keep them both healthy. But take a look at your waivers. Like I said, he's only 42% rostered in sleeper leagues, so he could be a good pickup for the coming weeks. Next up, we'll talk tight ends. K. Dotton. Evans and Godwin being out is K. Dotton became the go-to in that offense right off the bat. 10 targets this past week for 100 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but Baker trusts K. Dotton. So he is someone to look at going forward. I believe he's only in the 40-ish percent, maybe a little bit, 46-ish percent roster on Sleeper. So if he's available and you need tight end help, he could be your guy. Another guy to look at with Drake May being the quarterback in New England is Hunter Henry. He's 29% rostered on Sleeper. Over the past 2 weeks with Drake May starting at quarterback, has 14 targets, which is nearly 20% of the team targets over the past 2 weeks. So Hunter Henry seems to be one of Drake May's comforts and go-tos. So if you need a tight end, grab Hunter Henry. He could be a good start going forward as long as Drake May is starting. Some good quarterbacks to look for. So some of you may heard, but Tua has been put on the return list off of the IR. This gives hope to that entire Dolphins offense that has been absolutely terrible the past few weeks without Tua. Tua is only 46% owned on Sleeper, which is crazy to think, but with the injury, people probably had to go elsewhere. Check your waivers. If Tua's there, grab him. He could be a QB1 to finish out the season, trying to bolster that offense and get him back on track. And last but not least, like I was talking about Hunter Henry, but Drake May, 25% rostered on Sleeper. May has finished as a QB1 in his first 2 weeks as a starter. He's played 2 easy matchups, and the matchups are obviously probably going to get harder as the weeks go on, but he should be a volume play because this team will probably be playing from behind most weeks. So if you need a QB fill-in or if you're dealing with an injury at the position, grab Drake May. He could be good going forward based on his volume. But if you like the content, make sure you hit that subscribe button in the bottom corner. And we will catch you guys tomorrow.